You're listening to the Monocle Daily, first broadcast on the 20th of August, 2025 on Monocle Radio.
Giorgia Meloni's tell-all expressions at the White House summit. What role did she play among Europe's leaders trying to bring Trump to their point of view? Why the cool thing at the Vatican is a flat share, just ask the new Pope. Plus, when is a Swiss penknife not a Swiss penknife? When Donald Trump's tariffs force you to make them in America. I'm Emma Nelson, and the Monocle Daily starts now. Hello and a warm welcome to the Monocle Daily, coming to you live from our studios here at Dufourstrasse 90 here at Monocle's headquarters in Zurich. I'm Emma Nelson, and tonight my guests Juliet, Linley and Markus Schögel will discuss the day's big stories, including headline news. Switzerland's famed supermarket Migros is 100 years old and absolutely everybody has lost their minds because of it. Stay tuned, all that and more coming up on the Monocle Daily. Hello, everybody. Hello there, everybody. We are in Zurich, coming to you from what I'm reliably told is Studio 4, belonging to our Monocle Radio series. We've got Studios 1 and 2 in London. Studio 3 is in Tokyo. Studio 4 is Dufourstrasse 90. And I'm delighted to say that joining me around the table is Juliet Linley, journalist and former Vatican correspondent, and Markus Schögel, associate professor at the St. Gallen University Institute for Marketing. This is normally a Sunday morning thing, isn't it? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Guten Abend.
Guten Abend. Buonasera. How's life in Zurich been? I landed last night. I'm just trying to work my way around it. The rain has come, which is not great for Zurich, has it?
Yeah, and Zurich is back to business.
Yeah, how's it going? Because everyone's back at school, everyone's back to business. Everyone else in the world is still trying to work out where they, how to get rid of all the sand. But how about you? You're back hard at it, Markus?
Vacations were great, but when I came back here and see all the construction site works and see how cars are detoured around the city and where it's traffic jamming and where people are running and walking, I don't know if the size of the city fits to the traffic complexity that it has right now.
You know, you are the second person today who said to me that Zurich has suddenly got very, very busy.
It's like on and off. If vacations are stopping, everybody's coming back since Monday. It's back to business. Okay. And funny-wise, even people that don't have school children, they go to vacation because they say this is the time where I get quietness. It's really crazy. Okay,
and now the Italiana in you, Juliet Linley,
Italiana in me
is now in full Ferragosto.
Esatto.
And so we're not working, are we?
No, well, our school started even before the Swiss schools, funnily enough, the international school, which was on August 12th, which is, as you know, anathema for any person who's even vaguely linked to Italy. But it is true what Markus is saying about there are so many construction sites in the city. The traffic is very snarled, and they've got new speed limits along the lake. So I'm sure that speed traps are going to pop up because they've dropped from 60 to 50.
You're a big one on speed traps, aren't you?
I'm a big fan of actually having charities being able to sponsor a speed trap. Imagine if you get a speeding ticket and you just go, UNICEF just got my money. I'm actually not that mad.
There's that wonderful thing. Didn't you for one time have a speeding trap at the end of your road, which you used to have a sort of...
It would light up the living room every night.
An evening of viewing.
So funny.
Marvellous fun.
Marvellous.
And it seems an absolute act of cruelty to make people work inside in this temper, in this heat. But, let's have a little touch of Italy to start with our first topic of discussion today. I mean, answer me this. How irresistible a spectacle was Giorgia Meloni and her expressions at the White House summit this week. It was unbelievable because as the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz was talking to, indeed some people are suggesting, lecturing Donald Trump about the need for a ceasefire in Ukraine, all we saw was Italy's Prime Minister not capable of stopping herself from rolling her eyes. Now, she's done this before. In June, I think, if you remember, I think it was at the G7. France's President Emmanuel Macron was whispering something to her discreetly in her ear, and then the eyes rolled up again. So I'm trying to work out, what role does Giorgia Meloni play in international diplomacy, other than being that of the honest commentator? I mean, this is an Italian thing. Who was it who said last week, why are there no Italian poker player champions?
Because they wear their feelings on their face.
Exactly. So is this an Italian thing, or is this Meloni?
No, I mean, let's be honest. I think a lot of people would have contained those eye rolls, but be figuratively rolling their eyes on numerous occasions. I'm not specifically referring to Merz's calls for a ceasefire, which were very well intentioned. But just in general, yes, perhaps Italians are less subtle in showing their displeasure. She then proceeded, after rolling her eyes at what Merz was saying, she proceeded to again roll her eyes when Trump then teased her about how long she's been in government. And I don't know if you saw that, but where he was saying, like, Italian governments don't last very long, but you're going to be there for quite a long time. And so he was being friendly, and she subtly rolled her eyes again. But I mean, if you want to take a step back from, that's garnering a lot of press traction, I know. But and another aspect of Meloni's moments in the limelight in Washington these last days are also linked to her hot mic moment when Trump wrapped up his conversations with the press, and then she said he does it always, like talking to the press, and then she goes, and the microphone was still on, I never want to talk to my press. So you've got these two moments where she's in the limelight for maybe the wrong reasons. The right reasons would be that she is a bridge builder, let's say, or tightrope walker, whichever you want to look at it as, but between sort of the EU and Trump's administration. She's particularly close to Trump. I mean, there's a particular affinity there. He's called her on various occasions. She's a great person. I think he called her a fantastic woman who's taking Europe by storm. I think this was a few months ago. So clearly there's a strong bond between them for whatever reasons. And she was there, however, also to be a sort of, the press were calling it sort of bodyguard role, or in any case as a defender of Zelensky in this moment when clearly everyone was rallying around him to show strength towards vis-a-vis Trump. But I mean, apart from that hot mic moment, she was, it got a lot of press coverage, this hot mic moment. From the international press, they found it a bit amusing. The Italian press were up in arms. They were like, this is clearly a sign that she's almost an autocrat, that she doesn't like talking to the press, that she doesn't believe in the press being, keeping tabs on government, and just saying, and it is actually quite true, that she tends to prefer monologues and direct statements, even using social media videos, rather than taking Q&As from the press.
Marcus, this is an unusual moment, isn't it? Because an international politician is seen dropping their guard. And it made me compare the way that politicians communicate nowadays and the desperate fear of appearing to drop your guard and being hyper risk averse. Whereas in actual fact, it makes everything a little bit juicier and a bit more human when someone is actually able to either roll your eyes or be caught off mic saying something quite normal.
I have a different perspective on this, because when you look at it from the perception of what the European leaders were doing there, they crafted their roles before. They made a script on how to react, whom to say what. And from my point of view, Miss Meloni was not confident and not satisfied with the role that she got, because she sat close to Mr. Trump. She was the bridge builder, but she was not the one that was carrying the arguments. And she was the one that was safeguarding. If Mr. Trump jumps out of the suit, she should have calmed him down. That's what is my perspective. And all these moments when you have, German chancellor candidates were falling over smiles in high-water regions. So this is something that you need to be aware of. And I agree. Maybe it's a thing that she just communicates, hey, I'm different and I'm trying to communicate. I'm sticking to my agenda. But from my point of view, she was not that confident with the role that they gave her on the table.
And you're nodding there, Juliet, but what you sometimes wonder is like, what is it that makes someone click with Donald Trump? Because he falls in love and then abandons with equal speed and passion. But she seems to have sort of stayed the course a little bit. And sometimes I sometimes wonder whether they both have an inherent impatience. That they want something done now, and they are perhaps a new breed of politicians who are harder to handle, but actually will have a much fresher and harder way of communicating.
Could well be. I mean, also, it's funny because he tends to be seen as a bit misogynistic, but then you've got this lady, the first female prime minister, representing a country that's famously not the most feminist country on the planet. And so that's a bit surprising that he would have this affinity for her. I mean, remember, both of them are highly conservative. And it's perhaps a surprise. They're perhaps surprising bedfellows. And you talk about their impatience. Yeah, that might be a point too. And because of this sort of attention deficit that we sometimes see in the US president, you don't know how long this best friend BFF status will last.
Because it looks like it might be surpassed, Marcus, by the fact that the Finnish Prime Minister took a bunch of golf clubs when he first met him, and that was it. Then the bromance started.
Yeah, I mean, the German Chancellor brought his birth certificate of his grandfather with him to make.
That's not a golf club, isn't it?
No, but it's a way of it's catering to somebody that has a large ego and wants to be catered. Call it diplomatic lip service. I don't know how to call it, but I think that's typically something that they've all learned. They take something with them that they can please Mr. Trump with. And when you look at the press conference that he had with Zelensky in the Oval Office, they did talk more about his appearance and his unperformance than really about the topic. And when you think about this, I don't know if this is the proper style that we should go in communication as a politician.
Let's make you wear your marketing academic hat for this one. What does this say about the way that people are communicating and what you just said? I don't know if this is a proper way to go about things. It seems to be the only way to go about things at the moment with Donald Trump.
Yes, and what he's the king is he's creating what many people out of the IT industry call the reality distortion zone. He's creating the reality that he wants to have around him. That's what Steve Jobs was great in. That's what Donald Trump is great in. He creates a reality that is just his, and that's what he wants to send out over his bubble into the discourse of different opinions. And he's owning with this most of the time the agenda. And when he owns the agenda, everybody needs to cater it to him. So that's classical communication. You communicate first. If it's true or not, it's not the point, but you've made your point.
You're listening to the Monocle Daily live from Zürich with me, Emma Nelson, joining me around the table, Juliet, Linley and Marcus Schögel. Now, let's talk about something that cuts deep into the heart of the Swiss. And I say that cut with a very deliberate metaphor, because the Swiss pocket knife manufacturer Victorinox says it may have to shift production to the United States in order to escape import tariffs of 39% imposed by the Trump administration. The chief executive of the company said they could move the final steps of the manufacturing process, such as cleaning and packaging, to America. Victorinox has made its knives in Switzerland since 1884. So is this a big change? Juliet, this is a huge change for Victorinox, isn't it? And it's not the only company that's doing it.
But if a knife has been cleaned and packaged in the US, does that make it all of a sudden made in USA and no longer made in Switzerland?
I don't know. Marcus has literally put his hand
cleaned,
up.
Therefore it becomes...
We had this discussion maybe a year ago already when we talked about Toblerone and that stuff. Because the idea is that Swissness might be on your products if you've got above 80% of production in Switzerland. So that means if you go for the finishing part that you take out of Switzerland, it might not be a problem. The challenge is, from my point of view, and I think Mr. Elsner is further than just talking about relocating the production. I think this 39%, when you look at most of the calculations that my colleagues do, we're coming up to a price raise of 10 to 15% that will end up with the end consumer to a certain extent, because you will have loss in margins. You will try to redistribute your production, maybe to Germany that has a lower tariff and all that stuff. And if you really calculate it through and act from this moment on, you might be having so many different measures within your value chain that this 39% might not hit you at all that hard. It will hit you hard. But Switzerland was hit by the depreciation of the Swiss franc from 1 to 1, which they survived perfectly, where everybody was saying, oh my goodness, we're never going to survive this. I'm not saying it's only positive, because I don't have a result or a projection. But if you think about what Toblerone did a year ago when they said we're going to dislocate more of the milk use out of Switzerland and we're losing even more. Now they're reinvesting. They want to get back to Switzerland because they need to have some heritage. So this is going to be a balancing game that most of the companies are playing. And when you look at Thomas Meyer Ricola, he says, We get the herbs from Switzerland. Come on, where should we grow those herbs? Should we go to Mexico or something? But they are doing all their steps, and they're trying to do a lot of different things, and just not one moment will make the whole thing. And I think Mr. Elsner is going for a similar perspective.
But here's my question, Marcus. I mean, I don't necessarily, when I see a Victorinox penknife with its Swiss flag on it, I don't really care if it is or it is not made. As an ignorant consumer, I see the Swiss flag, and that can stay no matter how much percentage is. It cannot stay.
No.
The Swiss flag.
No Swiss flag on the products if you're not producing less than 80% in Switzerland.
This is a common thing, though, isn't it? Because you have, I remember when, I can't remember the name of the Chinese company which took over MG and the Mini, and they produced a large chunk of the Mini in China and then brought it back to the UK to finish it. This is before BMW took it. And it meant that it could exist as a British car because they'd done a bit on it. And actually you hear these things happening in Italy as well, that you have fabrics and manufacturing done elsewhere, and then they just a couple of stitches and made in Italy.
In the automotive industry, you do CKD. This means it's completely knocked down. You build the whole car, take it apart, take it to the country, build it up again, and sell it.
You can't do that with a penknife.
You could do this with the Swiss Army knife. You could do that as well, but I don't think that this is really the point. The point is that how do you manage a value chain that is getting much insecure? You don't know how long the tariffs will stay. You don't know how long Mr. Trump will rely on it, or is it Trump or J.D. Vance or some liberal that's going to take over. And I think what Swiss companies are looking for right now, and this is what you read a lot in the papers, is they're trying to get more flexible in their value chain. They try to dislocate and relocate and make themselves more flexible. And I think that's the best way to think about it.
It's interesting that Victorinox said that they'd been ready for about a year. They'd put money to one side and they knew what they were doing, and they said this isn't going to hit until 2026. So that flexibility, it feels good. It's almost inbuilt in the system.
Shall I give you one bet?
Oh, yeah.
The price for Victorinox knife will rise in the next minutes in the United States, because now you've got the chance to do it. Now you can raise prices and you can take away the profit because everybody knows you have got the tariffs on it. And so you increase prices already right now. You don't do it later on. And these are all different things that you're doing alongside of your value chain. There's much more to it than just saying we relocate just the polish of a Swiss Army knife.
And the interesting thing, actually, is that Victorinox and indeed many Swiss products have a reputation for being quite expensive anyway. So people won't really mind because, Toblerone is a nice chocolate, Lindt is a nice chocolate. Victorinox, the most beautiful penknife that you can get, so that you can have an inbuilt sort of markup. Oh, Marcus is back. No. Juliet is desperate to say something.
I want to know two things. At what point has everyone each got their own penknives and then that's it? Like, I know that they're moving into more kitchen knives and they sell a lot of those. You're like, no, you can never have too many.
You can never have too many.
But I have another question.
When you go from the University of St. Gallen, you go somewhere and you bring a present to a company you visit, you bring a Swiss Army knife.
But I've run out of...
That brings bad luck,
all my
surely.
friends already have them.
It works with Switzerland very well.
Oh, right. Because I was always told never give someone a knife.
No, but it comes from a neutral country.
You have to get a penny back.
Yeah.
That's what they do in Italy. You have to give a coin. No, but also, I would like to know from Marcus and from Emma, are we also buying these Victorinox watches, suitcases, fragrances? Did you even know that there's a Victorinox perfume, men and women?
What is it? I wonder what it's quite steely.
Well, a steely smell.
Sharp.
I'm just wondering, I say it's not something I'm attracted to.
No, but
how is this product extension going?
Well, this licensing, you can name different examples. You can name Marlboro, you can name Harley-Davidson, you can name Ferrari. They are all in the fragrance department of any kind of fragrance store around the world, in the duty-free and on. And that's like the sunglass business that you have with Luxottica in Italy. Every brand needs to have a pair of sunglasses. Otherwise, you're not a fashion brand. So in many cases, what Victorinox is selling is Swissness on different products with the reliability, with the technological innovation, and with the precision that they have. Colleagues at my institute did studies on Swissness many years ago. And Swissness is something that is related to what Victorinox stands for. It's not the Alphorn. It's not the cheese. Mm-hmm. For people around the world, it's if you buy luggage from Victorinox,
it's going to work.
It's going to work.
Your perfume will be precise.
Exactly. Yeah, but guys,
Emma's face.
Basic thing in marketing, sometimes you're not the fish that they're putting the bait into the water. You are not the ones that they're looking for. You're not part of the target group.
So who here, I'm just quick straw poll around the room, who here has a Victorinox knife? Hands up. Everybody around this table has a Victorinox knife. Now, either we're all massively practical and sort of go around there fixing and screwing and cutting and solving, or we
received a lot of gifts.
Or we were given a lot of Victorinox.
To be honest.
What do you use it for?
I used to have it on my when I would travel, but
Yes.
then when you were not allowed to take knives on board anymore, it kind of got shoved at the bottom of a drawer.
I have a very
to be
small
honest.
one and it gets on board.
Oh, that's
No one had that. What do you use yours for?
In vacations, opening the wine bottle.
Yes, very much so. And I had the same when my son was very small. We used to have a bottle of formula milk that when you took him out for his little trips, when it was feeding time, I'd whip out the penknife so I could open the bottle. Anyway, that's Victorinox, and we wish them the very best actually, because their survival is almost key to sort of the way that Swiss products are marketed abroad. Speaking of heritage and celebration and wonderful things. There is only one story in town, ladies and gentlemen. The Swiss supermarket giant Migros is 100 years old. It's marked its centenary this weekend. Everybody has absolutely gone bananas. Before we start, is it Migros or Migros? Because it has an S on it. Is it a silent one? Help us. Silent. Okay, I've been getting it wrong for a while. What is Migros? How did it come about? For those of us who've never been shopping in a Swiss supermarket, we're going to have to do a bit of catching up here. So,
Okay, well,
Swiss start.
I mean, first of all, in Switzerland, there are two major supermarkets, and that's it. And one is Migros and one is Coop. And the Migros one is the one with the giant EasyJet orange M. And if it's a bigger one, it's got 2 M's. And if it's a really big supermarket that also includes like do-it-yourself stuff and garden furniture, everything, it's a 3M. And the country literally divides down the line of which family is faithful or true to which supermarket. So I come from my mother's side. They're very Swiss, and they only shopped at Migros. And I felt like I was betraying my mum, bless her soul, when I would go to Coop, because all of a sudden I find Coop products so much cooler.
So
they have
you're
better
Migros
junk
child.
food. What?
So you're a Migros
child,
child.
but
Okay.
who rebelled.
Okay.
Their junk
You ended
food
up
is
in
funner.
Coop.
I kind of like, and their bio stuff is better, I find, at Coop too. Marcus
No.
does not agree
with
with the bio avocados at Coop, guys. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to have that conversation.
to our listeners
But
in
it's such a
Peru,
thing.
there you go. You've hit the mark with the Migros customers in Switzerland.
But what is funny is that at every corner, there will be both a Migros and a Coop. You always have them side by side. No?
No.
Almost.
No.
I mean, it's in my area. Oh, no, now.
Okay,
it's like,
okay, Juliet. Just down to the location strategy of both of them. So they're looking for spaces where you've got a distance of 3 to 5 minutes that you decide which way to go. What you find around the corner of every Migros is a dinner, because they're selling the
same
alcohol
family.
stuff.
Yeah.
And this was before the dinner was even bought by the Migros. And they're trying to compete on the same assortment. And this is the basic problem that they have. They've got a market share of 35 to 40%. It's even, their growth rates are pretty similar. They follow same strategies. They are caught off what we call a prisoner's dilemma. So what the one does, or no, a game theory dilemma of a game, you know, it's a competitive game. The one does, you need to do the same. So that's the situation right now. What I would be looking at, and this is what was fascinating me when I came here 30 years ago and I went to a Migros, and normally a shopping trip would cost me in a normal supermarket in my hometown of Berlin would take me 15 minutes. It took me 90 minutes to find everything. You know why? They don't have the brands. They had private labels. So I needed to check, is this the real coffee? Oh, this is non-alcoholic beer I don't like. So this is the cheese that there is no Gouda. Where do I find my cheese? Which kind of bread do you need? And so on and so on. I was exhausted after it because
and at that time you put 3 times more in your trolley. Because
Jesus, of course, I needed to check on this. So they had a really big basket of it. But what I'm saying with this is the Migros is, from my point of view, as a newcomer to Switzerland, still already 30 years here, but still feeling like a newcomer, it's a social, economical phenomenon. It started 100 years ago out as buses and trucks driving around, not having a supermarket. It became, in the 40s, it became a cooperative, which is, from my point of view, the best way of getting customer-centric. They were the first ones that were innovating in private label. They had the highest private label amount. Even Tesco is nothing against it, and even Marks and Spencer was a small guy against it. And what they did they diversified horizontally. They took their idea of making good for everybody into every kind of category, into banks, into traveling, and so on, and became a standard here in Switzerland. And nowadays they have the problem that they are very decentralized because they have this cooperative stuff. And on the other hand, they have the problem that they are with this decentralized stuff, they can't steer through all the products lines and business lines that they had. So now they're trying to refocus. They want to be cheap. They want to be expensive. They want to be liked. They want to be aggressive. They want to be decentral. They want to be central. They're all over the place.
There's an interesting phenomenon, isn't there, and I wonder who wants to talk about this. I mean, Juliet, you travel extensively from many different places, and you know the marketing part of all this, Marcus, that often a country's shopping habits are defined by who someone wants to be. I know that there's a thing that in the United Kingdom for a very, very long time, you defined yourself, arguably socially, by where you did your shopping. Whereas if I think I remember in Germany, there was obviously the Aldi brand came and the discounter, because I remember one brand, its strapline was "Sparen ist sexy." It's sexy to save. Now, I can't really imagine that happening here in Switzerland that much. So, how much do our supermarkets define who we are, and how we define what our supermarkets give us? Because we love a trip to. You've both gone completely silent.
No.
It's the great equalizer, isn't it?
In Switzerland, it's democratizing consumption.
Got it.
But I think you're very right, because this is the challenge that most of the retailers globally don't globalize so easy. Walmart failed in Germany, Marks and Spencer failed all over the world, Carrefour failed in Asia, because there's a lot of local stuff that retailers need to stick to become and stay a local retailer. Within Switzerland, we have now for 25 years the phenomena of selling products from the region in the region, which was a huge amount of innovation that the Migros did once. And this is something that the Coop and the Migros are really strong in. They're bounding consumers to regional products with high quality. And that's what I think what a lot of retailers are looking at right now. And this is where they're really localizing it. And they're doing that pretty well.
And how about you, Juliet, when you're traveling to Rome or traveling all over the place, that idea that you can instantly identify yourself from where you are, from the aisles that you're walking down?
I do love visiting supermarkets wherever I'm going and checking out local produce and buying things to take back. But also in Italy, I'm not sure that there is like a class definition according to where you're going and buying your produce.
Okay. Finally, on today's programme, let's talk about the fact that it's nearly start of university time, and many young men and women will have moved towns and also started out their new living arrangements. A common and often essential option is the flat share. By piling in with 3 or 4 other either relative but like-minded strangers, you save a bit of money, you gain a deeper understanding of how the world works, and you also enjoy a rather healthy social life. So that is for the younger end of the generation. Well, one man relatively new to his job and to his city is the Pope, and he has opted to turn the papal apartment into a flat share with 3 fellow-minded Augustinian friars. Juliet, who's going to be picking up the cassocks, or their mum's going to be bringing them pasta al forno and doing their washing for them?
Okay, a couple of points here. First of all, the Vatican has absolutely not confirmed this. Let's clarify that. This is a La Repubblica article that then got picked up by various international papers. And it's a paper that's pretty reliable on its papal intel, but I'm just going to say we do not have confirmation from Pope Leo that he's going to be moving into a WG, as they call them in Switzerland, a Wohngemeinschaft. But you mentioned picking up the dirty cassocks and putting them in the laundry basket. Actually, the 3 flatmates that are reported to be soon to be flatmates of the Pope are fellow Augustinian friars. So it's just not random. And an Italian, a Filipino, and a Nigerian priest. And apparently
sounds like the beginning of a joke.
It does. But apparently they're the three managers of his wardrobe. Now, who knew that the Pope actually had 3 people in charge of his wardrobe?
Doesn't
so I'm not,
have
but I cannot confirm this again. I may have been a papal correspondent once, but I cannot confirm that. Having said that, just when you thought that this Pope was going to kind of go back to more traditional living quarters, remember that Pope Francis, his predecessor, spent 12 years living in a guest house within the Vatican walls where visiting priests would usually stay when they come to Rome to have their meetings. Just when you thought that this Pope was going to move back into the papal apartment appearance and be a bit more regal or papal, if you want, in his choices, you hear this coming in. But in a way, it does make sense. There's a big echoey apartment, if you think about it. And Augustinians, in a way, are great believers in community. So this would give him a chance to not be on his own and to stay in touch with perhaps a bit more of a sense of reality and recreate this sense of communality and togetherness.
This is so sweet, but I'm not entirely sure how when you say that, you know, he wants to be a little bit more humble, as he possibly have been as the Pope, to have your three flat sharers be those who dress you, Marcus. I mean, obviously everybody has three dresses when they come in, but what's your reaction to this?
From my point of view, flat sharing doesn't stop with age.
There you go.
No, you see a lot of old people moving together here in Switzerland as well. So they don't want to stay alone. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, you could rephrase this and say, he's getting together in the same flat with his butlers. And that gives the whole thing another framing. And that might be just the thing that he's doing. So they're close to him. I don't know. I'm not the Catholic expert.
And when you see
I got all there by 18. So.
But you do see quite a lot of your students, I'm assuming, do they flat share?
They're the experts in flat sharing, and they love it. And it's the best thing when you come to St. Gallen, you don't know anybody, you go to a flat share, and immediately you know 70% of all students.
And one day you might be lucky, you might get the Pope as your flat share. Finally, on today's show, aviation accidents are often explained away with a familiar phrase, pilot error. It's neat, it's convenient, and it's rarely questioned, but it can also obscure deeper failures in the system. That's the struggle Rosanna D'Antonio found herself confronting after the death of her brother in an air crash at Toncontin Airport in Honduras. Her search for truth, part memoir and part investigation, is set out in her book 26 Seconds. And she spoke recently to Andrew Muller, and he began by asking her where her determination to challenge the official story first came from.
I don't know if your listeners know, but 70% of airplane accidents are typically blamed on pilot error. And so it was early on that I suspected that my brother would be made a scapegoat. Now, I didn't necessarily know what the statistic was at the time, but I just had a feeling. This airport was notoriously dangerous. There had been a whole bunch of airplane accidents prior to TACA 390. I think there was like 9 in a span of 30 years that had occurred. All these accidents occurred while the planes were attempting to land in a similar manner as TACA 390. And all of them were blamed on pilot error. So I had an inkling early on that he would be made a scapegoat. I didn't decide right then and there that I would write a book. As I started to hear some of the gossip, I started thinking, I have to do something. And I didn't know what that something was. And it's kind of evolved into exposing the story by doing my own investigation and by eventually writing this book.
Well, we should introduce the airport, which does kind of emerge as a character in your narrative in its own right. What was so dangerous about it?
So it's a very complex airport in the sense that it is constructed in a valley and it's surrounded by mountain ranges. And so in order for you to land in this airport, pilots had to maneuver many quick tasks in a very short period of time. They had to descend very steeply to overcome the mountain ranges, and then they had to descend quickly in order to land on a very short runway.
Had you had conversations with your brother about that airport and what it was like to fly into it? I guess I'm specifically wondering whether he said anything about whether he'd talked to other pilots about perhaps just going to the airline and saying, this is ridiculous, we don't want to do this anymore.
No, actually, having a pilot in my family, it was just second nature. We never really talked about it. He never actually told me any dangers or any near misses or anything that he had actually experienced. Now, after the accident, I did learn that there had been many pilots that had complained to their safety officer at the airline that there were hydroplaning conditions when these planes landed on this runway. And so that is part of the smoking gun that I discovered later on, that there were faults with the runway and everyone knew about it and no one did anything.
So there were faults with the runway even beyond the rickety location of the airport itself?
Yes. So when I finally got my hands on the accident investigation report, so here in the United States, after any accident, the NTSB does an investigation. And then once the investigation is concluded, that report is public information. So I can go on the NTSB site right now and download any accident report for any accident that has occurred in the history here in the United States. Outside of the country, that's not necessarily true. So the accident investigation report was never made public. Now, my family got a hold of it through indirect means. And once I got a hold of that report, I was able to dive into the specifics of it. And within the report, in a very nondescript section of the report, was an entire description of some construction operations that have occurred on the runway about 6 months prior to the accident. And this construction, it was repaving of the runway, was done in a very faulty manner. There were no grooves that were constructed on the runway, and there was poor drainage. And this was in the report. And it said that these conditions were conducive to hydroplaning, which had been occurring for 6 months since the end of construction. And in the report, it also said that many pilots had complained of this condition and that the airline had reached out to the asset manager, so in other words, the owner of the airport in Honduras, saying, we're concerned that there is hydroplaning conditions on the runway and winter, the rainy season, is about to start. So everyone knew, and no one did anything about it. Nobody reduced the number of flights. Nobody canceled flights during rainy conditions. So it was there, it was glaring, and no one did anything about it.
Did you set out to write the book, just as a final thought, with any idea in mind of what you hope might result from the book being published? Because it struck me at least as two books in one. One, it is an accident investigation of sorts, and I think it's important to stress to listeners that you're not coming to this completely cold. You do have a background in engineering and probably do understand these things in a way that most people wouldn't. But it is also an elegy for your brother. Which of those struck you as the most important thing? Did you have a particular purpose in mind?
I mean, essentially, it started out as a grief memoir, right? But there was this underlying feeling that I wanted to clear my brother's name. And there was also this looming thought that what if I discovered that he was at fault? I mean, what was I going to do then? I didn't want to fall into this confirmation bias. I did, as an engineer, I'm a scientist first. I focus on the facts. So there was this conflict initially, but as I started to investigate, there was also this element that touched on my professional skills, which was this accident investigation report and how it confirmed, how it vindicated the actions of my brother on that day.
And that was Rosanna D'Antonio talking to Andrew Muller, and she's the author of the book 26 Seconds. Well, that's all the time we have for today's edition of the Monocle Daily, coming to you from Zürich. The warmest of thanks to my panellists, Juliet, Linley and Marcus Schögel, and to our producer, Desiree Bandley. Our sound engineer was Desiree Bandley here in Zürich, and Flynn Simons back in London. I'm Emma Nelson here at Dufourstrasse 90. The Monocle Daily is back at the same time tomorrow. I hope you can join me for that if you can. Goodbye, and thank you very much for listening.